Hi Daniel, good morning. I guess it's morning for you, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. It's 8:30 in the morning, so just
Yeah,
starting the day.
yeah. So thank you for joining this call, and I'm sure you might have had a chance to look at our agenda as well. So I actually quickly wanted to jump on the discussion since I have seen you largely work on the packaging material as part of your altogether role in the sourcing and procurement. Just wanted to understand how does the pandemic has shifted the entire best practices pertaining to the sourcing and best practices and procurement for the corrugated box at the same time entire packaging material.
Okay. What I can explain in general terms is the pandemic effect was related to what I call the e-commerce effect. Let's say like that, which is we know that buying by e-commerce is a rising trend. However, it's a rising trend, or it was a rising trend in the new generations and people that is used to the e-commerce. But let's think in elder people. My grandpa, my grandpa, they normally don't were not used to buy in the e-commerce channel. So once the pandemic was here, once we were locked down, the thing was they needed supplies, they needed whatever they need, and they started to have. So any people, I was putting the example of elder people, but any people that was not used to use the e-commerce started to use it.
Okay.
And let's think about the material usage on that regards. Uh, Anything that you buy by e-commerce came into the, let's say, the original box of the product, whatever you have, inside of another box from the company of e-commerce that you are using, Amazon, Mercado Libre here in Mexico, and so on. So what happened is you increase the amount of paper per one product. So you received your new computer, your new laptop. The new laptop came into the original box inside another box. So you are multiplying the usage of that material. And the paper mills and the places where the paper is produced were not prepared for that trend. So you have a lack of supply in the market that gives you this lack or this how can I say it they were not prepared for that. So with this context, what happened is you started to have to switch from paper availability or material availability to lack of availability. So your sourcing or your prices start to rise. But the most expensive material that you can have is the one that you don't have it to produce. So one of the things that happen is instead of fighting for the price and trying to negotiate that price, you started to negotiate and fight to have the privilege of sourcing. So if you have a commercial partner sourcing your paper or sourcing your carton or your boxes, you need to have very good contracts in order to secure that you are going to be the first option once they have the material. If not, you are going to have shutdowns in your line because you don't have that sourcing. So now, from a price perspective, you shift to a source perspective, to a availability perspective.
Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, there are two pointers that has to be highlighted. Is because of post-pandemia, or probably in the language that we can call it as a pandemic and then COVID-19, is the one major shift has happened across the business. What you are referring to is the e-commerce. So that has all together driven the packaging demand and material is more towards the e-commerce businesses, and the demand for those packaging material has gone up by these e-commerce platforms. Is if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. You're correct.
Okay, okay. Perfect. So I think that helps understanding how where the market is altogether shifting when it comes to the packaging material. But at the same time, I also wanted to understand, since China is remain a major supplier globally for any raw material per se. So how does it actually impacting, say, post the supply chain crisis which has happened since 2020? At the same time, it again re-happened in 2022. And considering Mexico being is a nearest nearshore location for the US businesses, how do you see this entire procurement shift is happening because of this China supply chain crisis which is there, and the same time international trade war which is going between the US and the China same time?
China was like, how can I explain that? China was very, or I mean, it still be very competitive in price. They have prices that some of the times cannot be reached by any other source location. But right now, there is also a trend which is the lack of containers, and the lack of containers has this adverse result regarding the price of the logistic cost. So China started to suffer this because it's long distance from China to, let's say, US, and the very competitive price that they have started to fight with other places closest to the, let's say, the US market because of the logistics. Because the logistic price started to play a bigger role in the price composition of the of any goods. Let's talk about paper in this regards. But what happened is years ago the logistic part was certain percentage, low percentage, and now it started to rise. So it's kind of balance, Kamlesh. What we need today is we still need a very good price, which probably China has, probably New Zealand has with the paper mills. But the distance from there to the US location is what kills the price. So in the way that the Mexico business or the Chilean business in South America or even the Europe business of paper gives a very good balance between price per se of the material and the logistics cost is not that high in order to compensate. I think that we are going to see a shifting trend from the goods from China. If the container prices or the logistics prices is still on that trend, I think that the businesses needed to look to other places in order to avoid the logistic price.
Okay, so what I understood from your point, one difference that what you are trying to say is China remain a dominant player when it comes to the supply of the materials, or maybe for even for that matter,
Due to price, yeah. Mm-hmm.
due to price. But at the same time, the distance from the US businesses to China, that makes a significant difference. And the same time, but having said that, pricing remain a major factor, is it?
Correct, correct. It is a major factor. It is still a major factor because it's lack of paper availability, but the logistic price start to play a bigger role in the price composition.
So when you say logistic price, does it include the transportation, warehousing, everything, or are you referring to the storage as a particular segment of the value chain?
I'm talking about the transportation. If we need to be more precise, the transportation, the container itself is more expensive, times more expensive than was in the past.
Okay, so despite having so many constraints, is China is able to supply almost at the lower cost when compared to the supplier based out of the Mexico or the Latin America, or is that Mexico, or maybe for that matter Latin American suppliers are competent enough to compete with China when it comes to the supply of packaging material? Daniel?
Price to price, China offers, in a normal basis, China offers lower prices.
Okay.
Not that huge difference from the past, but they offer lower prices. What kills the negotiation right now is the logistic part, because let's say I have a $1 price in out of Mexico, I have 70 cents price out of China. That's a very good price out of each of the let's say the production sites. What happened is that once you add the logistic from the China paper, you are going to have $1.2 price besides $1.1 price that you will have from Mexico, let's say like that, to the US. So the logistic part, or the transportation part to be specific, start to play a bigger role in that regard. So China is still competitive in price. Let's say free on board out of the China facilities, or out of the paper mill facilities in Mexico, compared one to one, still to be a very good price. New Zealand has very competitive price, but you need to take in consideration right now the logistics. Something that in the past was not necessary, that how can I say that bigger role that it was playing.
Okay. So at the same time, it in with regards to the same point that you have highlighted when it comes to pricing, does China is with the same pricing, is China able to maintain the quality, or do they somewhere compromise in the quality front, Daniel?
They are offering. I mean, they have, as any other supplier, they have different specification of material, but
Okay.
apples to apples, they have very good materials that has been tested and so on, and they perform as well as any other European or American material. So it's not that belief that we have in the past that the China quality was low and so on. They have very competitive materials right now, specifications. If you are comparing apples to apples, what they normally do as well is they offer, how can I say that, lower end materials,
Okay.
uh, but that's something that is like a common practice for some suppliers. They have like the entry material with a lower price, and they have the premium material. So comparing apples to apples, the quality of the Chinese paper is very good.
Okay.
Is the same.
Okay. So at the same time, you have highlighted a significant shift is which is happening across the businesses post pandemic, with e-commerce dominating the almost every market. But sorry, pertaining to packaging material in general. So but at the same time, I also see a trend because of the e-commerce has come in the picture. There are a lot of wastage has happened. How do you see that this, because of the businesses are matching with the sustainability goal and the same time their ESG framework? Where do you see that this is shifting the entire packaging materials with respect to the ESG framework? That in ESG ideally stands for environment, sustainable, and governance.
Okay, let me put this comment.
Yeah,
I
please.
will, like a dream. I will dream about the even the companies and the consumer take care about the post usage material. Let's say the corrugated box on or any paper, and let me put this in a responsible way of doing the things. That does not happen at all. A lot of people waste the material, companies waste the material, but there is something that is going to change. Is the post-consumer material price is rising. So if you are not willing to recycle the material because you are a responsible people or person with the planet, and you have the dream of recycled material, and you are responsible with the earth in a dreamy situation, you are going to have you are going to do it because it's going to be a business. So today, the recycled content of a material, the reuse of the paper in order to make more paper has a price. So the paper companies are willing to pay more because there is no paper um, in the market. Let me give you an example of the Brazilian effect that we had during the pandemic. The government give some aid. I think the U.S. government also did that, but what I'm sure is from the Brazilian business because we studied that. What happened is the Brazilian government, sorry, give to the people the 500 reals or something like that monthly aid in order to not go out to the house. What happened is the people that works on the recycling business were preferring not to recycle the material, or the people that normally goes to recycle in order to get some money. They receive, let's say, they earn 100 reals per month recycling the material, and now they are receiving 500 reals because of the government aid. So they they left the paper in the container. They didn't go out to recycle the material, and there was no paper, recycled paper available in order to use in the new productions. So now it is like a commodity. I will say the recycled paper is something that paper mills are looking for in order to produce new material. Not all the material is brand new wood that they are using in order, or fiber that they are using to produce. There is a lot of content, and in the past, the most content you have of we call short fiber, which is the fiber that is recycled sometimes. The short fiber was like a very good content, or it is still a very good content of the new material, but it was cheap. And now, since the lack of the recycled material, you are going to the paper mill is still needing to this material. They are willing to pay more. So let's forget our mission with the planet. Let's forget our willing to give to our new generations a better place and so on. You can forget that part. What I tell you is it's a matter of business right now, and the paper mills are willing to pay more. In that regards, the recycling practices, or the recycling activity, needed to be uh, boost in order to recycle as much paper as we can. So the companies started to see that, the e-commerce companies and so on, any company, or the retailers, Walmart, wherever retailer, in order to give back those containers to any producer in order to have this. And now is a price matter.
So what I understood, so the governments are incentivizing for the company those who are recycling the paper, but at the same time, because of the pandemic has happened, there were some restrictions that companies were not ready to, or were not able to recycle all the waste material or something, if I'm not mistaken.
Not the companies, but the people that normally perform that activity.
So you
So
mean say the people, as in you mean to say end customer?
not end customer. I don't know the word in English, but the people that normally goes to any recycling company because they found in
Okay.
the garbage
Sort
the
of
the material.
distributor, you can
Talking
say. So
Talking
sort of
about the Brazilian,
part of the value chain,
so
right?
correct, yeah. So you have people that is dedicated to go to the garbage containers. They take out the garbage, they separate, they take the paper and send it to any recycle company. So that people receive a government aid.
Okay.
So they don't go to perform that activity. They does not perform any activity like that
Okay. So
anymore during the pandemic.
okay, okay. And does this aiding is across the Brazil market, Mexico, or is it the example that you gave me? Is it more pertaining to the Brazil market in particular?
It was very specific for the Brazilian market at a certain time of the pandemic. As far as I remember, they take out that aid once the pandemic was controlled. So
Mm.
it's not anymore, but it happens during the pandemic.
Okay, okay, okay. Perfect, Daniel. So my last question to you would be, what would be your suggestion when it comes to the small and mid-scale businesses, but predominantly into the FMCG and the manufacturing, those who are, because since the market has been started opening up to the normal business, or maybe I can call it the business as usual. So where do you see this the entire procurement and the sourcing practices is shifting post pandemic, and what would be your advice for the small and mid scale businesses when it comes to the sourcing and procurement of the packaging material altogether?
Okay, let me add something to your comment or to your question. Is yeah, we are going back to the business as usual, but the business as usual the business as usual today is not the same to the business as usual before the pandemic. And let me explain for why. Because the e-commerce arrived in order to stay. So people is returning to do their normal life business as usual, but they also know that they can buy by e-commerce. So you have your business as usual, but you have the e-commerce on top of that. So saying that the lack of material, talking about paper, corrugated or carton, whatever, is still something to watch out. A paper mill cannot be installed in a few months and is not as short in $1 million investment. They are huge investment and they take time since the authorization for any company and the installation. So the lack of material is going to still kind of a rising trend in the future. Yeah, it's stabilizing, but perhaps not to the normal percentage or to the normal the behavior that we had before the pandemic. Saying that, yeah,
Sorry to interrupt. So when you say lack of material, is it because of the recycling is not happening, or is it because the e-commerce has grown up, or is it because of the inflation is going up in the across globally pertaining to Latin American market?
all of them, Kamlesh. I would say all of them. Yeah, I mean the let's talk about this. They don't have enough recycling material. That's one factor. The other factor, they don't have line or production availability or production hours in their lines available because consumer requests are higher than what they can produce. And we are using the e-commerce and returning to the business as usual way of purchasing material. So you have a multifactorial situation here. It's not only one thing. It's not only lack of line availability in the paper mills. It's not only recycling paper availability. It's not only e-commerce. It's all of them. So saying that the lack of material due to all these factors will still be something to watch out. So instead of fighting or negotiating just the price and trying to negotiate a better deal and so on, you need to secure availability. You need to secure that your material is going to be at your front door in the time you need it in order to produce. If not, the most expensive material that you can have is that one. So saying that, and probably this is could be a common phrase, but is you need to source the material at the best possible price.
So you mean to say source the material for the keeping the long-term perspective at least for a year, is it?
I mean, it depends on on each
Type of business, is it?
type of business, right? Right.
Okay.
You need if your business depends on the
Packaging as in
carton
correct.
or of the paper as a critical part of your material, you need to secure in the long term. Probably
Okay.
you need to put clauses in order to negotiate something mid-term and so on. But you need to secure in with long-term contract. If the paper could be switched to plastic or to other materials in order wood, let's say, but, to other things that could be more available, probably you can take some risk and play with shorter terms contracts in order to try to negotiate something different. But on top of that, I will say you need, instead of only price, which happened in the past when you have the paper available, you need to start take a close watch in the sourcing, in the availability. So in the way that you have a supplier that secures the material first for you, and then the others with a very good contract, with a long-term contract, or wherever the negotiations lie for, you need to secure sourcing. So sourcing started to be part of the equation in order to secure the material and not have shutdowns in your line because of lack of material.
Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, you try to cover up the three major points. One is, of course, the entire packaging sourcing will largely depend on the type of the businesses, because of course the packaging material will be varying from if it's a FMCG company and if it's a IT software company, there is no comparison altogether. Second, what you have mentioned is one has to have the long-term visibility at least for a year, because and then according to that you got to decide on what volume and the material would be, especially when I say material as in raw material, that has to be decided. And the third point that you have tried to cover is keep a very close eye to the supplier and maintain a long-term relationship, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. You're totally right.
Perfect, Daniel. I think these were the inputs that we were looking for, and thank you so much for your time and much more appreciated.
You're welcome, Kamlesh. Glad to talk with you.